Welcome to another day of the Industry E-Meet by Design Quotient Labs. Today we have Karn Malhotra, who's going to be talking about creative automation. And it's going to be a really, really cool session. I've known Karn from a long time, and I would love to introduce him to you. Just one second, I have. Um, Right. So I'd love to introduce Karn Malhotra to you. Now, but before we do that, we just give you a brief background about why we do this and how it's done. All right. Um, so DQ Labs or Design Quotient Labs deeply believes that design has the power to make lives of millions of people simple, beautiful, efficient, and memorable. With this belief, the founders of DQ Labs, Sean and Umesh, both alumni of IIT Delhi, have they both have worked collectively for over 40 years and have embarked on a journey to create design superheroes. All right. So over the last 13 or 14 years, they've mentored over 12,000 students in creative careers. They are trying to achieve a lot of awareness, exposure, counseling, training, and mentoring to design aspirants, not only to get into the top architecture, design, or fashion schools, but also to help them settle down in their professions, and it could be either globally or locally, whatever it is. Many aspiring designers and their parents are really unaware of what happens, what creative careers are available, okay, and what do creative professionals do, once they get into the real world. And that's where we have creative professionals coming in. So we have professionals like Karn coming in every week, uh, and they could have a different interest either in architecture or fashion or design, and the professionals come and explain about their projects, the challenges they've gone through, the process that they follow, and many interesting aspects of their profession. So it's also a good chance for us to get to know who they are and their story and how they've come so far. So introducing Karn Malhotra. Karn has started out as a graphic designer, and he freelanced for a while after his education. And after a bit, he started Exit Design Studios way back in 2004. So Exit Design primarily focused on brand strategy and things like that, design and brand strategy. After working with many corporates, he got curious about brand standardization and then founded Outlined.co. So this is what he's going to be primarily talking about today, which is a design automation product for agencies and brand marketers. And as one of the people who's heading the brands of DQ Labs, I absolutely understand. I got a privy to see what Karan is going to be talking about, and it's a beautiful product for companies like ours, like major companies. It's a brilliant aspect of what he's going to be talking about, and it's real world. But beyond that, Karn has always had an interest in engaging with other people in communities, and the NGO community has always needed help with good communication. That's where Designathon, a platform, was started by Karn Malhotra, and a lot of our students have participated in Designathon as well. Um, right. So good good to know that Designathon has now impacted over 75 NGOs through 250 creators. All right, and it's brilliant to know that our students have been working along with these professionals to really help and impact the story of designathon.com as well. Um, on a personal front, Karn is also a martial artist and he loves beer and always up for a good conversation. All right, so Karn, over to you. Thank you so much for making it here.
Thank you, Dion. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Always a pleasure to be part of this kind of conversation, especially with DQ Labs. Um, our association, as you mentioned, has goes back a couple of years. I'm a big fan of the work that DQ Labs does, and it's so evident in the students, in their participation at 4 of the designathons over time. And they're the ones who drive all the energy, and it's always a pleasure to have them. And we look forward to having DQ Labs be part of many more designathons. So to today's topic, right? We're going to be talking about creative automation. So why don't I, jump straight into it and let me know if you can see my screen as it loads. So the intent behind the creative automation piece, as you said, Dion, a little while back, I got curious about how is it that clients. Well, basically, I've been running exit design for about 16 years now, and a lot of the time when we interact with clients, they would come back with very nuanced feedback. Saying that, okay, what if we were to just sort of change that orientation a little bit, move that layout a little bit here and there, etc. And it's a minor, small changes, and it made me wonder what would it take for them to be able to just do some of this stuff on their own, because it's not the most fun thing to do as a creator, as I'm sure people listening to this conversation right now and later as well might agree that the most fun part is in the research, and in the ideating and the conceptualizing, and then when you get down to doing it, you crafting it, that's also fun. But let's say, for example, if you have to craft that same thing into, let's say, 300 different sizes. Now that's the kind of thing that happens when, let's say, when you go to Flipkart and you're looking to buy shoes and you see these banners, and the same banners then start showing up in multiple other websites because they're tracking your online behavior. It shows in different formats. Now that kind of stuff is very, very straightforward, and it's not the most fun to do. So, and that's the kind of feedback that we were getting from clients also. So I said, what would it take for someone to express themselves visually without having to depend on a designer every time to make those small changes, because they're relying on my expertise, my skill, my understanding of the software, right? That is everything to do with me. Or if they don't want to deal with me directly, there's still that handicap because they don't know how to deal with Photoshop, Illustrator every time. I mean, they shouldn't have to every time, especially if they want to just make one little bit of text or image change. So that being the context, that's where we started thinking about Outlined. Outlined today is a full-fledged product where we work with agencies, we work with brand marketers, where the intent is to help accelerate, or reduce the time that's involved in different parts of the creative process, and where it reduces that time, where it accelerates other aspects of it. I will take you through that as we get to the product. Now, to jump straight into the presentation itself, as appreciate your introduction, Dion. But as you've already mentioned, I started exit design when I was 3 from college at Wigan and Lee, and I freelanced for a while, and I just felt right that okay, I've got some clients and I've got something. This partner of mine who's coming back from the UK, his incentive was that his girlfriend was here, so he wanted to be here, and then it sort of clicked. We got started, right? And then exit design has happened, and over time, Outline has taken shape. And as you also mentioned, Designathon is something that we worked on. Fortunately, we're thankful that our work, and I've also personally been featured on a variety of sort of public platforms. So always, that's great to have that kind of acknowledgement as well. That's a little bit about me. Now, this is where I would typically do like a show of hands, but like a virtual show of hands for whoever's there. If you're raising your hand or not. I don't know have you ever come across this thing called the Turk? Now, this existed in the Austrian court in 1770. And it actually went, it was this physical contraption of this man, of this mechanical machine that could actually play chess, and it was completely taken apart and assembled in front of the court and various kings and queens and their vassals, and just to ensure that there was nobody inside, and it was completely mechanical, and it's a work of genius. And of course they thought there was some witchcraft involved, but it was so brilliant because they played a game of chess, and it's very logic driven, right? So, and as you can see over here, it's a historical fact that it even defeated Napoleon and Benjamin Franklin at chess. Now, how did it do this? Well, there actually was a man sitting inside. As you can see, it was opened up completely this way, much like you saw over here. But then, so sitting way at the back, depending on which part was open, that backwards, and then his hand would come over inside, and he'd actually be able to see where the other person had moved the chess pieces based on some magnets, where you can see things moving. Then he would move the chess pieces around. But it was a ruse that flummoxed and fooled many people, including Napoleon himself. So the idea of thinking, and this particular thing is called a automaton. And automatons have been around for a couple of 100 years now. You typically would see them now also when you go into, let's say, a circus or a fair, where you'll have that one particular machine, you put a slot in, and that man moves a little bit and gives you a ticket or tells your fortune. It all comes from the same place. And then, many years ago, Amazon put together their own version of Mechanical Turk. People from all over the world could get online and say, okay, I don't mind translating this document, or tagging this particular image, or something along those lines, right? And Amazon came out with this, I think about 18 years ago. And in some ways, all of us have been doing this as well. Now, you might ask, okay, what does this have to do with creative automation? This is actually helping you, what I'm doing is setting the context. I'm going to show you happening in the world of sort of tech and in this creative space, because it's not enough for us to think of, okay, we get trained, we go for design education, and then we learn the software, and that's part of creativity. There's a lot more happening in the world right now in terms of tech evolution, and the tools that are evolving, and outlined is one subset of that. So it's important to understand, the other forces at play, so that we understand this in this larger bubble of creative automation. Whereas you can see, every time you were typing in, for example, you were typing in a number, you're typing in a word, you're actually helping translate, either tag a particular image as a car or a street, or you're helping translate, or transcribe a particular word, as part of the Google Open Libraries project. So you're translating a book that, transcribing a book that everyone can see. Then, of course, Amazon finally reveals itself as the Matrix. It will help application developers overcome certain types of problems, etc., etc. And so, does that mean, with conspiracy theorists, are we all living in the Matrix? Is this all true? And even Elon Musk says, we're probably all living inside an alien's giant simulation, saying end program. At this point in time, I'm really running out of crazy things to say. Any suggestions? Because there's, some conjecture that he himself might be an alien. But one of the most brilliant men on the planet. So is this true? Who knows? But how far are we from this scenario? Where we walk into an environment and you have these mechanical bots or robots with eyes. As you can see, they're trying to simulate a human in some ways, therefore to seem more believable, seem more human-like. How far are we from this? Let's say from you're walking into a studio space or a design studio space where you might have these kind of robots there. Some people that I've spoken to who are world experts in their space. Some have said we're about 20 years away from this in the creative space, only because creative automation is a little more difficult as opposed to, say, standardized accounting or legal work, etc. Right? Um, Other people I know are thinking, okay, that's maybe it's much shorter than that. So, to what extent does creative automation, etc., happen in the creative space, in the creative spheres? All right. Again, show of hands. This is what it would be. Um, Most people believe, right, even myself, that only my mom can make this kind of food. Only she can make those parathas a certain way. Only, she can make that rajma a certain way, or she can make the pongal that way. And yet, when you go into a hotel or you go into a restaurant, how is it that they make that same, whether kharabat or that, steak or that salad, it tastes the same every time? Because, and we're talking about a creative task, right? Only mom can make that some way. What they basically did is that they took that creative task and broke it down into the smallest, set of steps. And then they did that again and again and again till they fine tune it into a process. Recipe is just a process. You're following specific guidelines. It's like a flow chart. If you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. This is the result. If you don't do it properly, then you go back, you start over, right? That's one. So this is just one thing to consider, and when it is possible to processize, creativity. And it's not as if I'm saying it for the first time. It's been happening for a very, very long time. It's just that, because tech is evolving a certain way, we're now seeing it become a little bit more apparent. What about ATMs? Now let's go further back. I mean, not further back, but let's go into a different timeline, maybe about 40 years ago. This is an ad that came out, when ATM machines first came out. So this is in the 60s and 70s. And they're saying, news flash, ATM invented. It says yes 24 hours a day, every day. It says yes to 25, 50, even $100. It says yes at more locations around town than any other bank. Now, the yes machine, right? Why did they market it as the yes machine? Because this is an automated teller. You tell it what to do, it will give you, whatever it is that you want. You go to the bank and you speak to that teller, you tell that person, and that person will say, no, I don't have change. I don't have these denominations. I can only give you this. Or say the counter is closed, but this is available 24 hours a day. Now, when the teller machine first came out, they started thinking about, oh, this is, a cognitive task, and it needs that interaction. And now suddenly you got this machine that means people will be out of jobs. If anything, the opposite happened. More banks could now open more branches in more places. And what they realized is all the people who were, the tellers, they had a fundamental skill that automation could not replace, which is the ability to relate to people. And that created the role of a relationship manager, right? So I'm saying this in the context of creative automation also. And as you do your own reading and exploration, and there are resources that I will share at the end of this conversation. Um, Consider that robots or bots or machine learning or AI or any of these tools are there only to augment productivity. Even Gary Kasparov says, think of it as augmented intelligence and not artificial intelligence. It's there to help make you more productive, you know. So that's one example. Now let's just look at some creative basics, right? We all know that color plays a role in our lives, and there is a particular and what I'm saying is, why I'm showing you some of these slides is because when we're trying to create a framework, we had to look at what are the ingredients of visual creative expression. So color is one. So color means different things, right? So then you also need to look at typography. Now typography can be expressed, or it can be extremely expressive. But our intent was not to the tool not to be able to do all of this. If you want to create an illustration like this, you can't do that on Outline or many of these other online automation platforms. You have to use Power Tools or tools like Photoshop or Illustrator or Affinity. Of course, hierarchy lets the reader know where to look first. So rules of typography, and grids. Now, if you want to create standardization and communication, everything comes from a grid. Of course, what you see as an example over here is an example of how, say, Bootstrap would function, how wireframes are done for websites, right? And then when you have these kind of basics in play, and then you have Power Tools, when you want to create a brand, you use Illustrator, Photoshop, and all these other tools to create beautiful graphic communication like this, right? Now, at the same time, because we're talking about tools, why don't we just take one step back and talk about the history of tools, like a very 2-3 slide history, right? So till before Photoshop came on, now I'm talking about creative automation, right? So we're talking about the thing after Photoshop, Illustrator, Figma and XD and all of these tools. But what about before Photoshop, Illustrator? How do they do things then? Everything and if there are anyone in the audience, if people who used to work in advertising in even the 70s and 80s, they will tell you that everything was done by hand, right? They used to have these letter set sheets, and you had to put it on a particular place, and then you sort of sketched over, or you pressed it and it would come off the sheet. So if you had to do something like this, the photograph would first be exposed, and everything would have to be done by hand. If someone got anything wrong, then they had to start over. And this is actually a still from Mad Men, the famous show that you see online. So as you can see over here, and he has his paints and papers and all of that, and that was his desk, right? That was his physical environment. Now imagine the people behind Photoshop, Illustrator are creating this stuff, and they're saying, okay, all of this stuff now you can do online, but you still want comfort, right? Again, and now I'm telling you some of this because this is all some of the thinking that we thought that went behind into creating Outline also when we created the tool. How is it, what are the kinds of online or offline behavior that people have comfort around? Because if they're comfortable around something, then you're not forcing them to do or learn something new. Therefore your learning curve is low. So over here, everything was around this desk, right? And then when you think of it in that context, now you suddenly understand why the Photoshop interface has been this way. It's not changed very much. I mean, in 20 odd years, they invented it in, I think, 86 or 87, 20 or 30 years now. It has been pretty much the same, it's not changed drastically. You still have all these tools on the left and on the right and on top. And now you understand why, maybe they were mimicking some of this. It's not something I've read. I'm just sort of theorizing, but I think there's credibility in this theory. Because the same kind of behavior is what we're also looking to sort of take forward. Now, but today, everyone, everywhere, ever is dealing with a time crunch. They're trying to optimize costs, trying to get to market faster, even more so. All of this was true 8 months ago, a year ago. It's even more so right now because, speed to market, they maybe not as much because there's less competition, because fewer people are doing things, because few people have costs. But these concerns, few people have the budgets to spend, but they still want to optimize costs. They still want to optimize, their time. And this is really the reality, right? Graphic designer gets a whack, art director gets a whack, project manager gets a whack. From whom? The client. So, and this is the reality only because they're dealing with this. Whether you're on the creative team or you're on the, client team, that's what you're dealing with. So what did we do? We said fundamentally, ours is not a power tool where you'll be able to do these 100,000 things. You create an illustration from scratch. Things, make a few things happen. So let's just focus on that. So we got rid of everything. We just kept it very, very simple. So this is the earlier version. I'll show you the latest versions. You have just a background, images, text, and shapes. That's it. You don't need to have more because that's what you want to do, right? You want to change some text, you want to change some image, you want to have some basic stuff, and you want to have maybe a few more interesting automation bits around that. And I'll show you those as well. So enter our client. We created this online tool, which is an AI-driven predictive visual design framework. No compromise on brand consistency, simple interface, significant savings on time, cost, and increase in productivity. So one of our key hero features is around the programmatic creative. So where you can start with one particular size and design, and then it will automatically get resized into a bunch of different designs, a bunch of different sizes. This is something that we're actively pushing out into the market right now, and we're targeting, let's say, e-commerce companies or people selling stuff online, and most other brands also who are doing digital marketing, right? So this is really helpful. Then when you're doing communication, a lot of the time you end up having it on WhatsApp and on email and on the phone. Here you can click on that particular piece of design, put your comment over there, gets tracked. If you want to share it only with specific people, just like Google Docs, you can share, you can view only, you can view and comment, view, modify and comment. So again, going back to what is the behavior that they're comfortable with, and therefore how is that we can create something that can move ahead, that helps them. And then there is an analytics component that we're building in presently, which will give people line of sight on what is actually happening with the tool. What are the changes that are happening, what are the various bits that are happening, where is it saving me time, that kind of thing. And there are many more tools, many more bits that I can sort of show you there. And maybe at this point in time, before I go into some of the other automation tools, since we're talking about our client, I will give you a brief demo. But maybe before that, just before showing you the tool, just a little bit about how we sort of were thinking about it. Initially when we started thinking about the design of the tool, it was about, okay, feel the spark, let's create, choose, edit, go print ready. The idea was for it, it's very, very simple to go from this to this to this. That's how it's simple it should be. So in the context of, design thinking exercises, which I'm sure yourselves as students, and other people in the audience are very, very familiar of, we thought of a variety of different sort of scenarios, different kinds of people who were involved, what are the various factors that are involved in creation of a tool like this, whether social or political or ethical or economical. You have to consider it from a wide variety of angles, right? Because you want to figure out what is the opportunity. How is it ultimately, we might want to create this, but we want to be able to make it easy for people to jump onto it also. There's no point in creating something if it, then ultimately making it simple, saying that it's great for brand guidelines, you can have multiple languages, you can have quick options, yes, again, this is the earlier version. So the earlier version of the tool actually came with preset templates. You can click on them. So, there are some other competitive products out there, but now we're not focused on that so much, primarily because we feel that in the B2B space, right, where if you are a company, and I'm not saying that we're targeting only B2B companies, but you could be a B2B brand, you could be a B2C brand, but you make a connect with a customer when you go, when there is consistency, because consistency builds comfort consistently builds trust builds recommendation, referral builds ROI, builds more purchase, right? Now let's try one more simple experiment. I'm going to say KFC. Now when I said KFC, what is the color that came to your mind? Red, right? Now, what if you walk into KFC right now, right out? It doesn't matter when you watch this particular video, but right after this, you're like, okay, I'm damn hungry. I want to go and have a zinger burger, whether veg, non-veg, doesn't matter. But I want to go in there. And you go into KFC and you see suddenly everything it says KFC, but the font is a little different. The colors, maybe the font also is the same, but color is like purple and yellow polka dots and black and pink. What do you think? Is the food going to be the same? Is the service going to be the same? Are the costs going to be the same? You as a consumer want to know that things are consistent. And that's what we say with the outline framework. We want to ensure that you can speak consistently with your customers. If you want to create a different template every time, because you're a restaurant brand, that's what you want to do, that's fine. There are some options that we have for that as well. But if you want to have consistent communication, you want to build a rapport, you want to build trust, because it's the more people recognize the same shapes, form, colors, it builds comfort, right? You won't even realize it so often. If you're driving, there's a KFC, you don't have to look. It just looks that, or if you're driving on the highway, you see that big M, you say, okay, what does that mean? On this highway, if nothing else, I'll get a decent, clean, bit of food. It might not be the most hygienic in the larger scheme of things, but on the highway, okay, that's a better option than some of the others, right? So that's what it can sort of mean. Anyway, so that's what we sort of help do with our, and that's when the early part, that's what we were thinking in terms of how do we create it. Now let's jump straight into the tool very quickly. I'm going to take you through it, and then after that I have a whole bunch of other slides to show you some very exciting automation tools, many of which you can jump onto after this. After you see this this video, this live stream. So when you get into outline for the first time, this is what you see. This is your dashboard, right? Now on your dashboard, you have your templates, projects, and shared projects. Now when you go to let's say templates, this has all the different templates that have already been pushed onto the tool, right? These might be because you imported them as PDF files, or we've been involved in helping push some of the files online. When you click and edit any of these, you can then go into my project. These are all the files you have worked on, your version of them. They can go into further folders. Shared projects are the ones where someone in your team has worked on something, like I mentioned,
Pardon, I have
view
to
edit,
interrupt here.
view modify, comment, etc. So they've worked on something and they've shared it with you for approval. So we have a little bit of approval management also. Again,
Pardon,
what we're looking to
can I
do
interrupt you
through
here?
this creative automation bit is to replicate all the different kinds of behavior. So if you were to create a flow chart of, okay, someone, yeah.
Karn, I think,
Yes, Leon.
yeah, I think your video has frozen. If you can turn your cam off for some time,
So,
and there's a
sorry,
lag.
Leon, did you say something?
Yes, there's a lag in your talk as well.
Sure, please.
So could you please probably turn your cam off for some time till the net stabilizes?
Hi, Dion. I think I dropped off over there.
Yes.
You were saying something. Dion, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, you went blank for some time, or rather, there was a lag. I think now you are back, so you can share your screen again now.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. I think there are some connectivity issues. Dion, can you see my screen now?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Can you confirm that we stopped off at when I was talking about shared projects?
Maybe a slide, the previous slide. Yeah,
about my project.
Towards the end of this, when you move to the next slide, that's when we had the issues.
Sure, no worries. So just to sort of recap, and I think maybe to help you also edit this later, I'll just talk about my project so you can cut it over here. So my projects is essentially about, you taking the version of your file which is within the templates folder, and that gets saved over here.
Karn, it's a
And
little
shared
unstable again.
projects is a particular file, any file. Like I said, we are trying to replicate different aspects of the offline, design process behavior. Sorry, is my voice breaking up,
Yes,
Dion?
it's breaking up. If you could turn your webcam off, maybe that would save some bandwidth.
Dion, is my voice breaking up?
Karn, yes, your voice is breaking up. So if you could turn your webcam off, it should save some bandwidth.
Sure. Is this better?
Yes,
Let me
it
know if
seems
this
better
is...
now, right now, but I can still see your cam frozen.
Hi, Dion, is this clearer?
Yes, it's clear now. You could share your screen.
All right. My apologies to the audience and the organizing team with some internet issues on the side. So this is clear. Dion, my
No,
voice is clear
it's
now.
still breaking up.
Should I continue?
It's still unstable.
Dion, is my voice clear now? Should I continue?
No, Karn, it's still a little unstable.
Just 1 second. Let me just try moving to a different location and seeing if it gets...
Sure.
Just one. Is it any better now?
It seems better now, but I'm not sure whether it'll be stable. But let's try and see if it works.
Okay, done. All right.
Okay. Yeah, you can keep your video off though.
Yeah, I'll keep my video off. And sorry about this, the background noise. We'll try and mitigate that to whatever extent. Give me a quick second, please. All right. So I'm just going to continue from here, and hopefully we'll, because I'm also conscious of time, so we'll continue from here. So shared projects, like I said, we're trying to replicate the workflow where if someone in a typical, say, design studio, if they want to get something approved, they have to send it by email, or they have to send it by WhatsApp, or they have to physically show it to someone. They take feedback, then they have to do that. Sometimes there's miscommunication over here. So with shared projects where you can actually comment directly onto the design, that's also something that we've taken care of. Now, once you click on any bit of design, this is what you come into as the editor. Dion, is the voice and everything else is consistent, stable now?
Yes, as of now it's stable. Thank you.
Great. All right. So as you can see, guys, once you come into the tool, as you click on any of the templates, this is what you see, right? Now, as I mentioned to you right at the outset, the idea of there being, not much of a learning curve when you come into a new tool. So, for example, when you click on this bit of text over here, you can, this looks quite similar to any kind of, text editor that you might have within let's say Google Docs or any kind of blog, and when you click on, the image over here, like cropping an object or flipping it, or, the transparency that you want to do, or even, let's say, filters themselves, right? All of these are very similar to what you would have seen outside. Now, what I'm going to do is very quickly take you through some of the different interesting features that we have. First thing, the one that I mentioned right at the outset is, how is it that if I want to go from here and I want to go to a variety of different sizes, how do I do that? So I click on this. By default, our tool has a variety of different sizes that you have in different orientations, for different sort of social media platforms. And I'm going to click on all of them over here. And I click on generate. And now what this will do is that it takes into account the original size and then what the output size should be. And, therefore resizing the text and the image and, the logo and all the different elements accordingly and placing them accordingly. Now, as you can see, this is the square one. And when I click on the vertical one, it is automatically come out that way. With horizontal also, when I click on this, and this, again, as you would know, even whether you're a student or a professional, this is not something that happens, very easily as well. If you're getting done by a physical designer, right? I mean, because it does need, you do need to move things into place. You do need to ensure that, the size of everything is correct. The relative proportions are right. And all of these, as you can see, are different. Both of these are vertical, but this is 420 by 654. This is almost double the size, in terms of pixel. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these and let me first download all of them, right? So in downloading all of them, I can do PDF, web, PNG, JPEG. So let me do a PNG version. I download these templates and it gets downloaded as a zip file. Now, when I open it over here, it gets unzipped. Now, some are bigger, some are smaller because of this. And now if you want to individually change the font size, this saves a tremendous amount of time. Now, if I want to save these files also, I can save it, right? But imagine this, that's what I mean. Our intent is whether tools like Outline or Figma or XD, etc., they sit alongside your traditional tools, whether Photoshop or Illustrator or any of the other tools that you have. But the intent is to streamline, the workflow. Right. So while that refreshes in the background, let me show you some of the other features that we have here. We have a one-click translate feature. Again, automating the idea of if you want to show something in a completely different language. Now we have over 111 different languages over here. So you don't necessarily have to waste time in, always going to a translator. Now, if you can go to a translator, if you have like a heavy document, let's say a 200-page document, but if you're not sure about Hindi, do you really want to do this? And this also takes, contextual relevance into account and does it accordingly, right? So you also have this kind of thing. And one more, we've also done something called a random layout generator, where I know that, okay, because I want consistency in my brand, I want to ensure that my logo remains on the top left. But I click on randomize, and this is now generating layouts for me, taking into account what the different outputs could potentially be. So that's another feature. Now, all of these work in a certain way where it helps me. I then focus maximum time on the two areas. And this is what I mean. The opportunity for designers and communicators or creators now is where we're going to be needed the most is our ability to understand, the research and, understand the cultural context, the significance, of the input that we're getting, understand the nuanced interactions that we've had with people around us or between the different stakeholders as part of a design problem. look at a room and make sense of the emotion of that gut feeling that you have. That is where the skill that you develop. You will still need to use these tools. You still need to use Photoshop, Illustrator, and all that to create some of that. But if you can add more value, in those areas, and then understand how the business mindset works and the creative mindset works, and all these things work in parallel, going forward, that's where I believe there's going to potentially be bigger opportunities for us as creators. Now I'm going to create one more bit of automation. How is it that I can create? I'm creating a very simple banner over here, right? And what I want to be able to do is I'm going to create 5 different versions of this one banner, um, just using an Excel sheet. So again, we used Excel. That's something that everyone uses as a data point, as in, when they have to deal with a lot of information, they put it on Excel, and typically it is then sent to the creative team to then be able to make sense of all the information there is and manually create each of these different banners that you have. Instead, what if we just simplified all of that and did it online too? Now let's say this is my design by default, right? Now, what I'm going to do is my system automatically understands what is video, what is text, right? So when it says download text template, it will basically give me an Excel sheet which would say object 3 and a blank, and object 3 is the headline and everything below that blank. So when I click on upload text, I've got a couple of files over here to show how it works. In this particular Excel sheet, I've added 5 different headlines. I click on that, add this in. I click on upload images folder. I do that, add that in, and I upload files. Now in the images, basically I've added 5 different variants, 5 different photographs of this particular main image, and there's the logo image. Now when I click on generate, again, this is something that would take, let's say, I'm doing it quickly also, it'll take me about 5-7 minutes. This took me less than 10 seconds, right? And this is what I mean, that there are various aspects of the creative process which don't necessarily in today's world, because technology is allowing you to automate some of that. Think of going back, like we said, hotels were able to capitalize and were able to, create a consistent experience. Brands are able to create a consistent experience if they make certain parts of the process more efficient. It is possible that efficiency doesn't have to be, and that's the thing, the traditional belief that is that creativity, if you're trying to make it more efficient, then fundamentally you're doing it a disservice. I don't believe that. It really depends on what part of the creative process you're trying to make more efficient. Now let's look at with text itself, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replicate this text a bit because I want to show you something else. Now these are some integrations that we've done with other tools which are doing sentiment analysis on the text, So now this has got enough text over there. This is going to analyze, and what it's going to give me in terms of output is that, as you can see over here, how positive is it? 66% positive, 25% neutral. Joy is 99%. Maybe there's 1% anger because of that exclamation, right? But no suggestions over here for neutral. If I want to change a particular word, I can do that. These are some suggestions that I want, to use. But this kind of thing is really helpful. Let's say if I'm really conscious of, I'm writing something, when you're working with a particular language, to be able to, if someone doesn't understand, let's say the grammar or the tonality of that particular language and what impacts it's going to have, this sort of framework is part of a NLP framework, so neuro linguistic programming, and then that's something I also believe that going forward will become a great value add for creators to be able to understand how people's brains fundamentally function, how do they process information, how do they process information, emotion, and that's really what we're seeing over here. And what a brand or a marketer also wants to be able to do is make sense of that text to understand what will be the impact. and you can automate this as well. So I've shown you, a bunch of different, what do you call, options or features on outline. There's actually a lot more than I can actually go into, but because we don't have, all the time in the world, I'm going to take the last, say, 10, and, if Dion will allow me, maybe 5 minutes more after that to, the next 15 minutes, because we had this slight outage in between, to just take you through some more automation tools. And if anyone is interested in, wanting to know a little bit more about Outline, if and would want to chat more, I will share my details right at the end of the presentation. So please do get in touch. If you want to use the tool, there is an early access form that's there on the Outline website. You can see the link over here. Now let's look at some more design automation tools that are out there that you could actually use. In the context of creative automation, this is what I'm saying. Technology, if you, is as long as you rewire your brain, not think of it as that, only I can do this. There are machines that can do this. If you can be open to the idea that the machine can be your partner, it's not here to replace you. That's when creative automation becomes a massive opportunity. Because then, or if anything, if let's say, for example, if you want to go into an advertising agency, or even if you want to become an industrial designer and you want to focus on the most creative ideas, the machine cannot do that. You have to do that. You then give the machine, some input, and then it can maybe help accelerate some parts of the process, right? Let's say even if you take, say, 3D rendering, for example. Earlier, rendering would happen by hand, right? If you had to create visual, before there was, in the early days, you had 3D Studio Max, and now you have a whole bunch of others. But before any of those tools, everything had to be done by hand. Now, now in the real estate space, you have such realistic renders of locations and buildings, you can't tell whether it's a photograph or a render. Anyway, so going into these automation tools, these just maybe make note of some of these if you like, you will be able to see this video. So you have one tool is called Pictochart. So Pictochart is very similar. So some of these are B2C tools. Ours is, like I said, B2B, in that where we want to help businesses have more consistent communication. Some of these tools are the ones where you can actually go in over there, and then they'll give you hundreds of free templates, and then you can use them however you want, and you can do all of that. Canva is the best known example of that. Panda colors, if you're not sure about which colors to use and how they're going to look, it can generate a color palette. It can show you what it would look like in a particular interface, so you can help visualize that. If you want to use images specific to your brand, and you want the images, you can go to this particular website, duotone.shapefactory.co. You enter a name of a particular kind of image, it will show up, and then you can change the colors. So then again, this kind of thing, which you would then go, import an image, put it into Photoshop, change the color, add the monotone. This happens in a fraction, right? You upload an image into this, and it gives you the color palette from that image. Now let's say, for example, if it's an e-commerce company, and again, it's about recontextualizing where you feel that you can add value. If you think about, as I mentioned earlier, clients are struggling with going to market. They want to cut budgets. They want to do all of that. Now, if a client is coming to you and saying that they've done a photo shoot and they've shot all the images a certain way, you can see a color palette from it. And suddenly you upload 5 images, it gives you a color palette, you immediately have a conversation around that. You just save so much time. Even in, getting the color codes, putting them into this box, it would take you maybe 15 minutes or like 10, 15 minutes. You save that time also, right? And cumulatively think about, if you're doing this over 10, 50, 100 projects over time, it saves a lot of time. You can ask a neural net, what is the likelihood that a particular image would be sort of rated highly by most other people out there. You have a lot of websites where you get free images. So even in terms of photography, I'm maybe mentioning some stuff that a lot of people out there would already know, but then these are all sites that are available. If you want to be able to resize an image, you don't have to use Photoshop Illustrator for that. You can go to image resize, you can go to iloveimg.com. This site allows you to just one click take out the background. It does it so simply. You go to this kind of website, where it is great for illustrations. We have massive illustration banks. Again, please keep in mind, I'm not saying for the students out there that these tools are there to replace you. This is standardized stuff. Now, the other thing in the flip side of having standardization is that sooner or later, a lot of the stuff ends up looking like everything else. So I'm going back to what I'm saying earlier. There will always be a need for a creative individual to add that value, saying, okay, what kind should I use? Where should I use it? And where will it add maximum value? In what context? Clients might think, oh, I can use all of this stuff, but sooner or later they'll find that, okay, suddenly when they find all their brands are looking the same as every other brand, that's when they say, okay, maybe this is, not the best thing that I should be using. The noun project, if you want to use icons, instead of creating them manually. If you're not sure about how to pair fonts, you can use this tool where it gives you a headline, subheading, body copy, and depending on whether you want for it to be very similar in how the fonts look, or that it be higher contrast, you can slide this scale and it'll give you the names of the Google fonts. So you can then go to Google, download them, add them onto your website and anywhere else. If you're not sure about, if you're working with copywriter, please keep in mind this conversation today is about creative automation. So it's not about design or visual automation alone. The creative process in an agency, in any kind of space, involves writers, involves designers, involves marketers, involves servicing people, involves a wide variety of people who then can make sense of. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise in the background over there. Dion, just to check again, is my voice clear throughout all of this?
Yes, your voice is clear. It's just the background noise right now.
Sorry, my apologies about that. I think this neighborhood is getting a little excited with all the dogs out there. Like I was saying, so think of the entire creative process, and therefore how is it that the various parts of the creative process to be automated, but the thinking part is where you add the maximum value, right? So when you go into Hemingway app and you're not sure, okay, how easy can I make it? Like today we say the attention span of an average individual is 7 seconds, and of a goldfish is 5 seconds, right? Or 2 seconds or something like that. So if you have the attention span of a goldfish, which is most of us, simply because we're constantly getting these dopamine hits from our various social media channels or platforms that we're on constantly, which is why now it's become a normal thing where you don't have chunks of text like this. It makes it dense and difficult to read. You break it up into simpler words and text like this, where through more white space, it makes it easier to read. That's where a product like this also helps. Um, Again, artificial intelligence, proofreading, it'll tell you if something is wrong grammatically or with spellings. Then there are a couple of other automation tools where I'll just sort of quickly run through these because we have about 7 minutes more. And paste URL, you just paste a particular URL, it'll show you a mock-up within a phone. Video art is great if you want to let's say even for the students over here or anyone else, if you want to make a presentation around you know your portfolio and you want your video to be over there, it's a great idea to, this tool will allow you to share your screen and also use your webcam to record you, so then you can talk about your work as you're going through the different screens. Again, this kind of thing you would otherwise traditionally need someone to come in with a camera setup, you showing your work, one camera on your laptop, the other camera on your face, artificial lighting. Now, none of that. Just the screen light of your screen and your webcam and your screen share. Rocketim is another tool that does what we do for video, PDF, everything that you want to do. Again, if you want to convert from JPEG to PDF or Word to PDF, a lot of this stuff is not possible before. Now, you have tools that automate this. If you want to, again, add voice to a PDF, you can do that. You can look for online interesting content as a marketer if you're interested in marketing. If you want, as a social media digital manager, again, the creative process in the agency, when you want to push out content, instead of having to do it manually for each of the different social media channels, you can do it centrally. So then this becomes your online social media manager, right? So where you put in all the content and this person pushes it out. Then again, they are doing the automated part, the mundane part, which is actually going, uploading an image, uploading text, pushing it out. But in this case, you do all of that once, and this thing will do it for the rest of the month automatically. Logo Pony is a fantastic site. If you want to create a logo in 5 minutes, you can do this online or automatically. Front is a great website, much like Wix or Squarespace to create a website. Beautiful.ai is fantastic to create presentations, where a lot of the time you end up creating a particular slide where you're adding, 5 images or 6 images. Suddenly you realize, oh, I had to be only three. Then you have to remove it and you have to manually resize everything. Instead, you move 2 3 things around and this will just automatically beautify itself in terms of layouts. And there's that AI bit that adds value. The deep dive doc is if you want to look at what your competitors are doing in terms of updates on their sites, you can see that. Even to the extent of when someone is sending out, say, some hate comments or political comments or whatever it is, smart moderation will pick up on this and edit those. You can do that. This is the level of automation and as part of the work process. So again, my invitation to the people who are listening over this: don't think of the creative process only as those what we're learning in theory and what we're learning in the tools that exist. All the other technology bits that exist around us will now require for us to recontextualize our expectations of the creative process and therefore where we fit in. So the best thing that you can do is make yourself more aware of these kind of tools, and that was my intent in today's session also. So just so that you have better exposure, you have more information, and then if you have a greater interest, you can jump into this. Realize it, will through your webcam will do an understanding of where you spent more time on which part of the screens and what was your emotion when you're looking through it. If you want to have a two-way conversation, compose a little bit of music, you can do that on this website, experiments with google.com. So that was that. But fundamentally, where we're looking to add most value, and this is just not directly related but indirectly part of the process. Brace yourself, client feedback is coming. uh, Again, this would be a raise your hand if you believe in this. If Coca-Cola were to lose all of its production-related assets in a disaster, the company would survive. By contrast, if all consumers were to have a sudden lapse of memory and forget everything related to Coca-Cola, the company would go out of business. Now, just think about that. Let that sink in. And this is where, again, I'm saying, in the time here as creators, this is where we can add most amount of value, where what we do with our thinking and our contextualizing and making sense of it and our insights from that to create memorable ideas, but use data as part of the process. If you're able to do your research much faster, you can get a better idea out there potentially much faster. This is just some basic stuff that is out there in terms of how do you create a brand. Again, this is where I believe that as creators in the context of automation, we still have to focus on some of this stuff which adds a maximum amount of value. Looking ahead, now if you look at it in the creative automation bit, we just talked, some of what outline does is somewhere over here. But strategy, concept, and a large chunk of design, this is where people in the creative process add a significant amount of value. We just end up not acknowledging that we end up spending about at least 30-40%, if sometimes much more, in this part of it, right? And that's what we're looking to streamline. Now, suddenly imagine, instead of being able to do 3 projects in a month, you could end up doing 5 projects in a month. Suddenly you end up having 20 more projects in a year. That's a significant up thing. And and if you're able to do 20 more projects in a year, because you're leveraging automation tools, your productivity is higher, your value to the company is higher. Therefore, if you're just in the context of money, they potentially have to pay you more because you're adding more value to the company, right? And therefore, think in the context of not just what we're doing, but the journey that we take the person on, and therefore where does automation play a role in that. These are some other thoughts. I've been part of a bunch of interesting conferences over time. I'm just saying that some of the skills, this is just in terms of traditional structure of how design education happens, but these are some new things that we definitely do need to think about. And it seems like jargon, etc., and maybe you learn a lot of this in college, But if you have an interest in math, if you have an interest in economics, you have an interest in some of that stuff, you're inquisitive about data analytics, start just watch videos and start reading some stuff. You don't have to know it. You won't have to maybe be dealing with a lot of this stuff till much later. Even HSBC has, they upload a design and the AI gives them feedback on whether it's on brand or not, what needs to change or not, instead of the feedback happening by a designer. And again, fundamentally, design maturity delivers outsized benefits. And this is, I think through InVision did a survey with a couple of thousand brands, and this is what they found, that there's multiple X's of, where it adds value to the business, and how it saves time to market. You stop thinking about, production, move to more innovation. And also there are lots of other interesting, this is my last slide. I think I'm pretty much bang on time. Yeah, 5:05. There's a lot. The last thing that I'd like to want to leave you with is there's a lot of conversation happening in the context of with automation happening in this variety of places. And then where do people play a role? Now there's a growing conversation happening around, okay, how is it that we can quantify the return on investment on design? We always thought, okay, we can measure how many people are tuning into radio or to TV, or even on a hoarding. But how is it that you measure the impact, of a logo or of a brochure? So designers need to become more aware of some of that stuff. These are some resources. If you go to either the outline.co website, you will see some of these links around creative automation tools. I also have a podcast, which you'll find on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and even on the Outline website if you're interested in any of these topics. That is it. I hope that was helpful, ladies and gents in the audience. If you'd like to get in touch with me, these are my coordinates. And over to you, Dion.
All right, Karn, thank you so much. I mean, that was very interesting. Um, very, very cool to see how automation is being tracked or is being done. Where creativity is being done in a very automated manner, and I like the way you pointed out. There's so many things other than outline, doesn't for your screen recording, and so many other platforms that you showed a little while ago. That was interesting as well. Whether it's logos or things like that.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
very cool, very cool. Right. So, how like I want to talk about your career progression.
Sure.
Really, okay. Because you had your first company, which is Exit Design Studios, and then how long is it before you started this outlined.co?
So I started Exit Design in 2014.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm just wondering, should we chance now moving to video? Maybe I'll stop my screen share. And
Sure,
I hope everyone's got the coordinates that you need to have. You find me in all these different places. Otherwise, you can definitely reach out to the good people at DQ Labs, and they have them as well. So I'm going to
absolutely.
stop this, and let's hopefully we will not have any major bandwidth issues. But yes, hey guys, I'm back here. Dion, just let me know in case you find that there is some lag with the video.
Sure, sure. No, that's perfectly fine right now.
All right.
Um,
So to answer your question, right? You were asking about I started in 2004, which is Exit Design, and then I started working on the idea of Outline in 2015. So it has been about 4 or 5 years, but we've gone through uh, four major sort of pivots or iterations of the product. And the product that you saw today is something that is only maybe 6 months old. So this latest version of the product is the one that we're pushing out into market, and we're onboarding people. And I'm happily sort of having these conversations with a variety of different people and showing the product. In between with Designathon, also Designathon, I think the first iteration of Designathon happened in 2014. Um, in terms of career, I have even there have been times when I have got completely bored of design. And I, believe it or not, but I actually got into infrastructure. I got into road development, and I got into waste management and some nanotech stuff. And I was doing that. I mean, I was running Exit Design briefly under another name, for maybe 2-3 years. Uh, and I realized that's the thing, right? For me, in doing some of those other bits, I realized that design is actually one thing that I truly love doing. I can like wake up in the morning and love talking about, there's always something new to sort of learn. I'm sure that there is always something new to learn in the medical space, or in rocket technology, or even in road building. But design is something that I love doing and love talking about. And I guess I had to go away and come back to it to really appreciate, what I could do with it.
All right. Yeah. So what happens here is, a lot of people go in for a mainstream career. All right. So you look like you have, bridged your passion for design and then getting a little entrepreneurial there, getting starting your own business, of course, initially freelancing, then starting your own business, and then now you've got this kind of a startup, and it sounds pretty cool. um, from a marketer's perspective, of course, a lot of the people here, audience here, who is into marketing would
Mm-hmm.
probably understand the impact of what you've done a lot more. All right.
Eventually, yeah.
um, yeah, and definitely this is a problem that a lot of marketers face, of standardizing that brand and getting the graphics done, things like that. So it's a huge tool, and it takes a lot of time and effort for the team to work on this, and it's brilliant to see this automated now.
Hopefully many more marketers also find, agree with you and, and sign up for products.
Absolutely, absolutely. um right, but now as a designer, all right, um which school, there's a question here from Yasha Bandari. All right.
Yeah.
um or let me start with a question from G Sketch. All right. So he says, which university did you complete your education at?
So I went to Wigan and Lee. Wigan and Lee was associated to Wigan and Lee, UK. It was a design school that was started in, I think, 2000, if I'm not mistaken, and I graduated in 2003. I don't think they have a campus in Bangalore anymore. I'm not sure. I think I'm pretty certain they don't have a campus in Bangalore anymore. But what I really enjoyed about going to design school was the fact that the curriculum or the structure was very autonomous, and you could take ownership of your own learning, and not necessarily at your own pace, because there was a structured set of modules and everything else in place. But yeah, so I really enjoyed design school, because I did badly in my 12th, and I actually got into design completely by accident. I was supposed to do engineering. I'm so glad I didn't. This is not to take anything away from anyone who's done engineering. I know that some of the people, the founders of TQ Labs, have gone to IIT, so kudos to them. But it was just not for me. I know that I would not have been the best at it. I feel I'm much better at this, and I'm thankful that I went to Wigan and Lee. Yes.
All right. All right. And so the tools that you learned in your design school. Now, this is a question related to what Yasha Bandari is asking. So the
Yes.
tools which you learned in your design school, is it similar to what you've learned, what you use now, or has the interface changed? Have things changed tremendously?
Well, like I said, I was in design school from 2000 to 2003, and Photoshop was created in 86 or 87. So even when I was joining design school, Photoshop Illustrator had been in the market for 13 years, 12, 13 years already. And there was CorelDRAW, right? CorelDRAW is still around. And then now you have other tools called Affinity. Affinity they have their version of a Photoshop and their version of an Illustrator. And it's just as easy to use, significantly cheaper. This is not a plug for Affinity. I'm just saying that I also find that, Adobe subscriptions, you end up paying a decent amount of money, for every month. I'm sure the DQ Labs people know this. And no, so the tools really haven't, those core set of tools haven't changed much. What has changed is a new generation of tools that have come about. So your Adobe XD or your Figma, or Sketch. A lot of these tools which significantly streamline the process. And a lot of these tools also have come as a result of the UI UX space becoming so big. Our consumption of information moving to digital screens over the last 10, 15 years primarily, right? So, I mean, increasingly there's the amount of even advertisers, they spend more and more money on digital marketing more and more. Let's say in the last 6, 8 months, people can only market on digital because nobody's going into any physical spaces. No one's really going into cinema halls. You can't do anything over there. Print advertising, I don't know if you noticed, but like in my home, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to know from you, Dion, but we stopped taking the newspaper, I think, at least 8, 9 months ago. And out of curiosity, the other day I walked into, I was walking past, some chai kade, and I picked up the Times of India. It was 8 pages, including Bangalore Times. Bangalore Times was one page in the back, and then there was, the rest of the paper. It's because, I mean, yes, partly because nobody's really advertising, not many people are advertising right now. But I'm saying that, again, when you're thinking of design and yourself as someone adding value in the system, you do need to take into account how is consumption of information is happening. Are people advertising? Right now, everything's happening on digital, which is why that's happened over the last 10, 15 years, and more people are doing that. So people who created these tools, people who are behind Figma and behind Adobe XD and behind Sketch, they understand, okay, we can't have people wasting so much time on using Photoshop, Illustrator for everything. There has to be a better way to do it, and that's when they created these tools, and that's where there's tremendous value. And it's a similar thing with outline also, that there are some parts of it that you have to use Photoshop, Illustrator. I mean, Photoshop, Illustrator are fantastic for, I mean, the kind of stuff that the it's, I mean, you combine Illustrator with like your iPad, and a lot of people do that for illustrations, and it's fantastic. But Outline is not for that. Outline is for a whole bunch of other stuff, and then there is room for all of this. So there's an evolution of all these tools, and like I would imagine there's going to be the next set of tools would be in terms of democratizing. How do more people create content? Like, let's say people like the person who asked this question, yourself, Dion, me. How can we democratically create content for AR or for VR? Again, right now, all of that is created by companies or by very complex software. So these are the next versions of tools that will now become available in due course.
All right, cool. And so what kind of clients do you target? I mean, what kind of agencies, or who would be a typical client of yours?
Well, I mean, it'd be different for exit design, different for outline, but I will answer that for outline first because we've talked about the design automation tool. So with outlined, like I said, our focus is to streamline the creative process. Now, the creative process could be for, let's say, for an agency first. Within an agency framework, it could be an advertising agency, it could be a PR firm, that's a public relations firm, could be an event management and event marketing company, or it could be a core brand design firm. Like these four different types, right? Advertising, PR, event, and brand design. Now, all of them, they end up having to deal with a lot of information, right? When they're creating, especially advertising an event and maybe PR, where let's say IPL. The IPL is going on right now. There's so much advertising that's happening online right now. So this particular, let's say Myntra is doing advertising, and they, through the IPL season, they have to do 1,000 different small those banners because they keep have to appearing in because there are different combinations of different products they want to put, different price points, all of that sort of stuff. So the agency that has to do it manually, and that becomes a pain point. So that's one use case where an agency can sort of use it. So we tell them, instead of it replacing that person, it's resource optimization. So that's what we tell the agency. On the other side, when we're talking to an end brand marketer himself, this goes back to what I was saying, that where creative individuals can add the maximum value. So when it's talking to brand marketers, we tell them, listen, you know it's a difficult time for everyone right now, especially. I know that you're thinking of cutting your agency retainer even further than you already cut it. So instead, use this tool for this straightforward stuff. Give your agency the belief and work with them as partners in coming up with more creative ideas. So that's how we sort of pitch it, because our thing is not to replace anyone but to be part of the process. So those are the two broad categories of people. But then there's the third, where they're sort of business owners, who they understand that, okay, I can't always use a Pictochart or a Snapper or Canva, because having something different goes back to the analogy, like I said, about KFC, right? You think of red, but suddenly you see purple and yellow every time, and it becomes brown and pink. It's not the same experience. So that's where, for small businesses also, this can add value. So those are our sort of focus areas with product.
All right, pretty cool. And there's a lot of times that creative professionals, they love doing creative stuff, but they struggle with marketing themselves or selling themselves, right?
Mhm.
So as an entrepreneur, how important do you think that that marketing aspect is, and pushing yourself out to make sure that you're heard? How important is that, versus creating a good product?
Well, uh, and I just want to. So, are you asking from the point of view of, because it's different when someone is just starting out as a student, and it's different when someone has been more experienced. So, are you asking more from the student's perspective, or it doesn't
Well,
matter? It could be across the board.
yeah, it could be across the board, because but I'm asking from the point of view as when a student gets into a design school, they want them to have really high value on their creative skills,
Mm.
which is good. But once a student is graduating, they don't, or rather during the program, they don't really teach them too much of the marketing aspect, right? How do they sell their designs? How do they sell themselves? So, as
Right.
a skill set, we are trying to create that awareness in students that, all right, they need to have good sketching skills as well, they need to have good creative skills, but they also need to have an element of entrepreneurship and an element of marketing, right? So how important is that? I'm coming from that perspective.
Sure. Great question. And I will allude you to, to or refer to something that David Ogilvy said, and I'm just paraphrasing over here. But he said that, if you want to get ahead in your career, you should know how to write a good memo. And of course, and this may be in the time of, this is like pre-email, right? So in the 60s, when David Ogilvy was running the agencies, you had to write everything in a memo, and there had to be a circular and be on the notice board. But if you're sending information that is out, that has to impact a lot of people, it's the same as standing in front of a room and making a presentation. If you are unable to articulate what it is that you have created, which is of tremendous value, uh, other people are not going to pay attention. So definitely, as good as, and I've seen this happen. I mean, I trust me, I was not the most skilled guy in my batch in at Bill and Lee. There were some that were infinitely more skilled than me. They had fantastic, ability to sketch and to conceptualize and come up with brilliant ideas. And I was okay. I guess I was just very enterprising, and I love to meet people, and I love to talk to people. And I saw an opportunity, I was like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll do it, no problem, it doesn't matter, what have I got to lose? And I think that's really important, especially when you're starting out your career. And I think I've tried to keep that consistent with me for the large part. I think that's like, at least from my perspective. And I think a similar thing from DQ Labs also. That's also been one of the reasons why DQ Labs and Designers On and us, we've also worked together, and it's worked because we said, okay, fine, let's try it, let's see what happens, right? And we've had open conversations. And I think as a communicator, that's what we don't think of ourselves as designers, but as communicators, as visual communicators. But you do need to be able to articulate, you do need to be able to speak. Now, let's say, and I also want to put one last thing out there. I It might seem like I'm an extrovert, but growing up, I was always an introvert. I was always the quiet kid. I barely spoke. a lot of the time, even now, when I'm in a group of people, there's some groups of people that I don't really talk very much. Because I mean, you're comfortable over there, and not for different reasons. But I realized, for me, one of the things that I don't know, I'm just saying that, there can be different ways that you can find a way of expressing yourself. For me, I have a love for theater, so I did a lot of theater, around the time of college and after college, and that made a huge difference for me in terms of being able to be expressive. Like you say, I'm very sort of animated in my expressions and the way I talk and all of that. A lot of that comes from the theater training, and I think, for the students out there or for the creative individuals out there, it's not a bad thing to, I don't know, even now go for like a debating class or join Toastmasters, or, read a lot more. Just be inquisitive, ask a lot of questions, and I'm sure, Dion, maybe you've also experienced this, right? When it's not only the students that sort of think twice about asking a question, it's even in a corporate environment. People will be, there are 20 people in a boardroom, and everyone knows what question to ask, but nobody will ask it, right? So it becomes very important for you to be that person who says, it doesn't matter, it's just a question, it's fine. Some people will laugh and it'll be done in like 20 minutes and half an hour. Some people will stretch it, it's okay. But the fact that you ask that question, it sticks in someone else's mind. So I think, yeah, take some of those chances, it helps.
All right, cool. Aditya Sriram is saying, how do we reach out to Outline? So if you could probably share that last slide of yours.
Certainly, I can do
I'll
that right
stop
now.
mine,
Yes.
and so we'll put that slide on for some time.
Yes, I will
Yeah.
keep that in the
So
background.
that's how you could get in touch with Karn.
Yeah, this is like Back to the Future over there.
I noticed that. Yeah. So cool. Uh, right. So moving on from there, all right, to a little bit about you as a person. So you said you're a martial artist, right? So how do you balance your work and your hobby?
Great question. I think, and this is all, I have to put the caveat out there that this is also just a work in progress. I also struggle with this, you know. But I think it definitely helps to have some things that are a routine, like I was at some friends' places last night, and we were talking about just waking up early in the morning. So like for me, my best, like usually I have a great day. I sleep by like 10:30, and I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm not saying everyone should wake up at 5:30 in the morning. It just works really well for me because it energizes me. So by 5:30, I'll wake up and I'll laze around for like half an hour, meditate for a little bit. If I get and sit down after everything, done, getting ready, etc., I sit down at work by 8:30. By 1 o'clock, those 4.5 hours, I've got so much work done. It's just so much more productive. So I think it's what I'm inviting people to sort of look at is that it's not either or. It's how is it that you can find way of doing both, but just seamlessly structured in a way where you feel the time that you are doing whatever it is that you're doing, you feel damn good doing that task. Like for me, if I'm doing my work and I do it first thing in the morning, I'm charged about it and I get my workout and I do all of that stuff, and then that fuels my own mindset and my own mood, right? In terms of then say, okay, then I'm looking forward to doing something else in the evening or in the afternoon, whatever. If I start work, which also happens, which is why I said this is a struggle. And I'm sure everyone has struggled with it. I'm sure maybe it's been challenging for you also, Dion. Working from home for the last 6-8 months or whatever, right? So, so like there are times that I wake up at, I don't know, 10:30 and do workout in the afternoon. It's like a waste of a day.
Yeah,
What do you say, Dion? You
absolutely. I'm an early bird as well, so I prefer to wake up early and start off early
start off early,
and to
right?
achieve a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, right, but yeah, but apart from your martial arts, I know. I mean, because we first got in touch when you organized the Bangalore Design Week, right?
I was part of the team, yes.
And yeah, you were part of that team, and a core part of that team, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, and for you to be able to mobilize a whole lot of designers and promote it, and really work as that team and really promoting the spread of design all around. I think that was a great achievement as well. um, so how do you build on these connects of getting the design community together, binding that community together?
So the Bangalore Design Week is a fantastic example of what alignment around a common purpose can help achieve. It I love meeting people. I love connecting with people. I love networking with people because I'm curious about people. I'm curious about their stories and how we can connect and all of that sort of stuff. And I think if you're generally curious about that, and you make new friends or you make new connections, and some will stay and some won't, and that's okay. Uh, and something like Bangalore Design Week, and I have to say, uh, as as much as you see outline and you see exit design, you see design-a-thon, you do all of this stuff. It's not me alone. If it was just me, I'd be going mad. I would not be able to do this stuff. It is there are with outline. There is a development team. There is a support system. There are a couple of people that I reached out to as mentors. Designers for Bangalore Design Week. When we were working on Bangalore Design Week, there was a team of 8-10 people, core team, and I was part of that core team. Even the thing that we did where DQ Labs also was part of one of the events that they did. There was another girl, Krishma, and myself. We together worked on creating all of those different events that happen across the city. That week, I think at about 70 or 80 different events that happened through the week. So I think, and for me personally, the reason I'm able to do that is because I'm very grateful that I do something that I really love doing. So I think finding that passion and finding that you either you like it or you love it is really important. Because if you don't like it, you don't really, then you do it for the sake of doing it, and then some of those extra jumps will become harder to do. It's like, if you're really motivated to work out, and get, cut those 4 or 5 kilos or whatever it is within this time frame, then you don't mind pushing that little bit extra. You do 20 sit-ups, you don't mind. You don't mind. It's painful to do 5 more, but you do them because your motivation is different, right? As opposed to, "Achha, I want to get fit, and it's okay if I get fit a little later." So a lot of the time you'll end up doing 20. Sometimes you stop at 18 or 17. So I think the right kind of motivation, like for me, my motivation is people, connecting with people, and therefore connected with Bangalore Design Week with the entire team. The team came together around a common purpose, and that common purpose was also set at a next level as a subset of the larger organization, which is called Association of Designers of India. So, and one last thing I just want to point out over there. Sometimes I've also wondered, do I have like some version of ADD because I end up doing so many different things, right? Um, and I think it's just something to accept about yourself. If you are excited by lots of different things, there's no reason to not. I mean, not to try them, not to do them. But then that does come as there is a trade-off on some stuff. Like for me, at different points in time, it's been difficult. It's been challenging to be motivated about doing outline or doing exit design or doing design because I'm spending 30% time sometimes on stuff, 30% on different things, as opposed to spending 80% on one thing. So yeah, I think personal motivation is important. Sorry, Leon, is this breaking up or is it okay?
Yes, yes, it's breaking up a little bit. I think your cam is frozen. um let's hold on for a little while till you probably uh, come back. Your cam seems to be have frozen again.
Okay.
Yeah, should be better now.
Is this better?
Yeah, it seems better. So
I
let
put it off and put it on.
all right, all right, right.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah,
you were saying.
yeah.
Okay.
So pretty interesting. Yeah, because I think the Bangalore Design Week was one uh, really interesting event, and it was amazing to see the mobilization and the number of the interest in design. There's a tremendous interest in design, which I had no clue about. That we've been part of this industry for so long, yet we did not understand the impact that design has on people, and how so many people are interested in it. And it also really talks about the potential um, that people are recognizing in design, right? Um, so, which comes down to my next question, which a lot of parents or a lot of professionals have, that what is the potential? I mean, is it something that we're still seeing at a very nascent stage, or is this at a are we at a peak when it comes to design? Are we at a downfall when it comes to design? What stage are we in when it comes to the design industry in general?
So I think, when you have that law of diffusion of innovation, right, and that sort of curve that you have, I think we're somewhere in the middle or just on the other side, where it's beyond sort of critical mass, where design is understood as, adding mainstream value. And now, more and more people at a strategic level, at a hiring level, are in the last 5-7 years, the number of people, for example, in the corporate space or in the startup space, who are necessarily making design thinking or making good design decisions and hiring people into those roles, seen a huge uptick. So if anything, I think, students right now, you're probably coming into a really interesting time where, more and more people are going to be sought out, which is why I think an understanding and the ability to sort of work with new kinds of tools, new kinds of processes. There's one other thing that has is starting to take, a lot of traction, is something called design ops. So some of the slides that, if you're still seeing my screen, right? So for example, these slides from here, like for example, HSBC, I was part of, and I think about 2.5 months ago, where a lot of global majors were talking about their design operation framework, where in essence they have like, uh, not so much on the conceptualization side, but much like how you do DevOps, just operations. Think of design as a framework where you need to operationalize it, and therefore you need to create a mini organization within your organization to manage it, which is a departure from just thinking of it as in, okay, we'll have a marketing team or we will have a small design team. So um, a lot of the stuff that you saw around, these set of slides. I think this lady is global head of another massive bank, and this guy's from HSBC, and there are lots of studies and tools and frameworks that are out there right now, which are talking around design ops. So it's a fantastic time to come into this space. I wish it was like this when I first got into design, but I think it's very exciting.
All right, cool. And you mentioned something about ROI, really measuring the return on investment on design. And I want to touch upon that aspect as well, because I think that is one of the most challenging um, things to track, number one. And number
Mhm.
two, as a designer, it's really hard to put a price on the services that you provide. You know, so if say someone says I'll develop a logo, right? Um, there needs to be some value associated with that. So how do you get into this ROI on the work that is done?
So if you can see what I've just opened up on screen, Dion,
Yeah.
and I'll share this a lot of. new frameworks that, products like InVision have put together, which talk around how is it that you actually break down the ROI of, in this particular case, they just say, okay, define a business lever. What is the specific business impact that specific business problem that you want to impact? Estimate what, if you were to impact that, what would be the financial impact of that? And then therefore saying that if you were to go, use this particular piece of communication, which impacted this, change this, business lever or this business problem to this way, it could lead to a 2% jump, in your top line or bottom line, etc. Now I'm saying maybe that expectation might not be there of a design student to talk that way. But I honestly believe that it is the kind of skill that it's not a bad thing that if students, let's say, for example, if, a design student or someone in the audience right now, his or her father is in finance or in accounts or is a business person, take some of these articles and go and have a chat with them and say, Dad, okay, I know that this might not be the case otherwise, but how is it that, I can understand this? Can you explain it to me with respect to your business? And the moment you start talking about, okay, design, making these changes because it can help increase revenue, so it attracts more customers, increases customer value, decrease fixed costs, decrease variable, a particular set of design decisions or particular set of design processes, things that you're changing along the way, and therefore incrementally how can you measure them? So it's not just about coming up with a new idea, but also creating systems and processes to actually measure them, to map them, to track the impact, and then sort of see, okay, did this increase cost, did this decrease cost, and money going in, money coming in, money going out, the difference is your profit, right? Putting it, oversimplifying it, but there are these frameworks that exist, and InVision, this particular article that they've put together, is just one of them. There are many more that are easily available right now online. So I would invite, the people who are listening in or who are viewing this to actually just start looking for this stuff, because you will find something that, and even if it seems like jargon, just sit down with someone who you think of as a conventional business person or a marketing person or a sales person or a finance person, give them this article, ask them to explain it to you, and that's how you can, that's how I would say, just to sort of get started into it.
Pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is I've found the link, and I'm going to share that link on the chat box for the audience so that they see, that they get hold of that. It's a very interesting article that you shared. All right. So Malvika Prakash is asking, how did you discover the creativity within you?
Completely by accident. Completely
What
by
do you
accident.
mean?
Sorry?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? So the honest truth is, I always had a fascination for automobile design. Like, I loved cars. I love cars even now. And I wanted to design cars. But then the moment I realized that at that time when I wanted to do that, I would have to do A, I would have to do engineering, and B, I would have to, automotive design is one subject in the 8th semester. That is the last year of college. I was like, I'm not going to go through torture for 3.5 years to study one subject for 3 weeks. So I mean, like, for me, that trade-off didn't make sense over then. I was a little bullheaded about that. That was one. Second is, closer home is that I did badly in my 12th. I didn't do well at all, enough to get into engineering college. So I had to sit out a year, I would have to appear for the CET again, or appear for my, boards again. And in that time, when everyone else in my class had moved on, I started going for sketching classes. So, and I remember this gentleman, which is in Bangalore, next to the passport office. There is, I think he still conducts art classes. His name is Mr. Sharif. So I went to Mr. Sharif's place, and I met this friend of mine, Rolf, who also has done really well for himself. He now runs, he's a restaurateur right now. I mean, he owns a bunch of different pubs and bars in Bangalore. Um, but I went there, And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, there's something called charcoal paintings. Oh, I was aware of some of that stuff, but to actually do it. And then he would come and stand over my shoulder and he's like, oh, you have some skill. Okay, okay. Do you want to like try and do graphic design? I was like, what? So like a very conventional thing. I was aware of what is interior design, fashion design. I didn't even know something called graphic design. But then he told me, okay, there is Srishti, there is NID, there is all of these. So I wrote the NID entrance exam. I didn't get shortlisted for the interview. I wrote the Srishti exam. I got shortlisted for the interview. Out of 40 students, they were going to bring it down to 20. When I went for the interview itself, you're supposed to carry, your small portfolio and like these 3 mandatory sketches, right? So I didn't do one mandatory sketch at all. Like I didn't do it. And I walked in over there and like one hero, and I was showing on my work. And then, Mrs. Narayanan, who's then the dean of Srishti, she was like, oh, so if I give you 40 sketches to do that you have to do by day after tomorrow morning, you're not going to do it. And from then it was just like downhill. That interview just went so badly. And but then that's how things work out, right? Then Wigan and Lee had just opened, and we were the second batch. Me joining, I went, and there was this considered one of the stalwarts of the Bangalore advertising fraternity, Sadhika Peer. I went and met her, and she looked at my portfolio, and she was like, forget this 12th standard CET engineering, all that. Come join. And the rest is history. The rest worked out the way it did.
Nice. That's a very cool story. Very cool story.
Yeah.
So, Malvika, I hope that answered your question. And and a lot of kids these days, they're worried that they and I'm bringing this up because specifically you brought up your 12th grade.
Mm.
um, and a lot of kids these days, they really struggle with their 12th grade, and their focus is there, and the system wants them to focus on their 12th grade, while in reality the design skill set that you're required to be a successful designer is very different from what they teach you in 12th grade, physics,
Yeah.
chemistry,
Yes.
or that.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, and also the entrance exams that you see is a lot very different. It's got no physics, no chemistry, nothing like that, and a lot of art kind of things, and expression of design and expression of thought. um, what do you think is important for a aspirant to prepare for before they get into design, or just to build their interest? What should they do on a daily basis, like apart from their class 11 and 12 studies?
Mm, well, I
or,
guess.
or or rather, what are the habits they should get into?
Well, I guess. Let's say, for example, if you are thinking of pursuing a career, before career, like get into design school, or you want to think of, okay, maybe I could do something creative, quote unquote creative. I could, if you have an interest in, I don't know, you're 14, 15, and you are very big into the sneaker culture, and you love dressing a certain way, and you love the idea of how these sneakers are um, designed, or how they look, and you follow them. um, and let's say, for example, you take the Yeezy brand. You think Kanye West is a star, whatever. If you think that, um, just find out how they went about doing the stuff that they did. How did they go, into the process of creating those shoes? Where are they manufactured? This is just like general knowledge stuff, right? You can Google it, and you can find it. But I'd say, if you have an interest in a particular thing, just start getting more and more curious about it. Because think of it another way, that if your parents see that you are really spending a lot of time in doing and researching and finding out, and you're talking about it, they'll say, oh, okay, he or she is really interested in this, so maybe we should encourage it further. And I'm only saying that also because, you know you do have some parents who are very understanding and very encouraging of some of this stuff, and you have some parents who don't understand creativity, right? Like my dad, very typical Punjabi father. He was like, okay, he does sketching, something he does. I don't know what he does. And it was just, I mean, It's not that he wasn't interested. It was just something that is completely left field. There's nobody else in my family who's done anything to do with art, design, creativity in the way that I have, right? So because when you don't have that context, you don't have the experience, it's difficult. But if he had started seeing me do or being, have an interest in some of this stuff early on. So one is, an interest. Second is, if you already have a skill, if you're good at sketching, if you're good at visualizing and I don't know, designing or whatever, just do more of it. Build like you were talking about habits, right, Dion? So it's not a bad thing to, okay, if you, like they say, if you want to be a writer, just learn how to write 100 words every day or 200 words every day, no matter what. Come rain, hail, sunshine, whatever. You're sick and you really don't want to get out of bed. You still make it point to write 200 words because that's the practice, right? And then when you do that, then that's when, then there's this other rule, okay, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert, 5 or 7 years, etc. Right? But then you also have someone like an Elon Musk who says that, okay, if the average work week is 40 hours, right? 8 hours, 5 days a week, etc. And I'm not saying that you should be work like Elon Musk. I'm a huge Elon Musk fan. I'm sure there are lots of other people who are Elon Musk fans also. But he says that if you are just spending 60 hours a week or 80 hours a week, it's going to take you half the time to get to where you want to compared to anybody else. So it's just about doing the work. You're just putting in those small practices in play. And like for me, early on when I started the studio when I was 22. It was hard. I mean, there were times when I came back home and I would just lie down on my mom's lap and I would cry because, like, I have friends who are going and partying, who are having a good time, who are being, people in their mid 20s, and I was working, and it seemed crazy. Of course, God is kind, and I'm very grateful that things have worked out the way they have. There have been ups, there have been downs, and I focus on the upside. But it will be more difficult to say, okay, I want to do all of this and I want to do all of that also. You will have to do some of those, you know those trade-offs. And the easiest way to do those is just build a small practice, a small habit that you can do every day, that doesn't take more than 5, 10, 10, 15, 20 minutes to do. And even if you do it consistently, day in, day out, or every other day, much like you were alluding to, Dion, in the context of a habit, that just becomes a behavior, and then that becomes part of your personality. So yeah.
All right, cool. And probably one of the last few questions I'm going to be um, asking. Oh, there's a question from Sangeeta Rajni. Um, with the quarantine now, to use this time to enhance your skills, what software would you suggest to be learned by industrial design students of industrial design?
Okay, so I'm not an industrial designer, and that's not my forte. So I would say that Dion, and especially Umesh, etc., because of their industrial design background, would probably be better suited to answer this question. I That's really not part of my wheelhouse, so I'm not the best person to answer that question.
All right, I'll probably touch upon this. I'm probably Umesh would be the better person to answer this, but um, Alias is Alias is a software that is very very commonly used by a lot of transportation design students. In fact, next week, in the same industry e-meet, we've invited an Alias professional, so they would be able to probably next week's talk you would get to understand a little more about those software that industrial designers use. um, but yeah, but I think going so Sangeeta, please attend next week's
Don't
webinar.
listen.
I
Don't
think
listen.
that's going to be good. Yeah. Having said that, right, so Karn, there's a lot of uncertainty. See, now the moment parents think of, or in general, when people think of, say, a engineering career, you go, you study your engineering, you go get a job, and Infosys will come and hire 200, 300 people. All right. So there's a lot of stability associated with engineering. However, when it comes to design, there's a lot of question marks. Is it as stable? Is it, um, you know, is it something to be concerned about, or are they jobs? What do I need to do to get those jobs, right? So you, having gone through that process, what is your opinion about the stability of getting into these creative careers?
I think it's a very it has so this kind of question or this kind of concern, honestly, I think would have been more valid maybe 15 years ago. I don't think it's as much of a concern anymore, uh, for a couple of different reasons. One is that markets on the outside have matured enough to understand the value of design and design disciplines across the board, whether it's industrial design, graphic design, fashion design, interior design, architecture, whatever it is, where they add value to the business, where it's not no longer seen as a just like a add-on or as a replaceable thing. Now I'm saying obviously applying to the right kind of company. And when I say the right kind of company, like today, the biggest ad agencies or ad agency networks are not your WPP and Omnicom, etc. These are the ones who own GWT and Ogilvy Mather globally. The biggest ones are Sapient and Deloitte and Accenture. These are the consulting companies who have created massive. They have been buying design and strategic design companies and design skill companies. Wipro bought a company called Design It globally. So Design It is one of the biggest strategic design sort of intervention companies in the world. And most of these large major software companies have invested in this because they understand the power of design. So parents, if you're worried about it and you think from an engineering standpoint, these are the owners of these so-called engineering mindset driven companies who are buying other companies, which are in the space of design. So that's the biggest validation that you have, and if anything, they're now after buying them out because they want to have captive sort of centers to be able to then give those services out to more and more clients globally, because they already have a global network. They see it as a strategic fit, right? And then they're saying, design it, we're now going to open 30 branches. I don't know what the strategic roadmap is of design it specifically. I'm saying as a case, in, as an example, they would then be buying this out, saying, okay, design it has 6 branches over the next 5 years. We're going to ensure that they have about 40 all over the world. And this is just one company. There are many of these that are opening all. I mean, that are being bought over, that are being expanded. Hiring is, yes, at this particular point in time, there are some challenges around that. But uh, long term, the trajectory of design is, I'm not saying it's not on the up. It's already, that it's crossing over that threshold of critical mass. So design and design communication is going to be one of the sought after skills. Where if anything, I'd say um, more and more people will be studying, more and more people will be coming out of that. And I don't mean to be sort of uh, like a big fatalist about this, but I'm saying if you think about it just from another side, because we were talking about creative automation, if so much of the stuff is getting automated, they're actually taking away some roles from engineers. Look at it another way, right? Because you're making machines do that. Yes, your engineer needs to be able to create that framework for that machine to be able to do that. But once that's done, you will then have a need for people who can now think, okay, the mundane stuff is done. Who can think more creatively? One other thing I'll sort of share with you, Dion, and which I think will be a good thing for people to check out. So there's something called Singularity University, which does some fantastic content. Um, and economics, yeah. No, not economics. Um, what? Sorry, just one. I'm looking for a Singularity University. Yeah, this one. This particular, it's a fantastic video which talks around the idea
Hold
of
on.
exponential
Hold on,
economics.
if you could share your screen. Yeah, your screen is being shared. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm doing, I'll just do is I'll share the link with you on the chat window here, Dion. So then, if you would want to share it with everybody else, you could do that. But this is again a video that's available on YouTube. And one of the things that they say is, is going to be the sought after skill is something called AQ, which is adaptability quotient. And inherently, creative individuals are the ones who are most likely to be able to deal with uncertainty and change and be adaptable because of the malleability of how we think and how we process information. You know, engineers are the ones who, again, I know, I realize I might be painting with a broad stroke, but I've had enough of my experience. It's difficult to talk with a software engineer if he's okay, he wants to do it only that way, only wants to do it that way, right? Whereas creative individuals do tend to look at the bigger picture and look at things. So if anything, parents, I think now is probably the better time, if ever, before, to get into the design space, because the next set of big millionaires are going to be the people who are on the creative side, not on the machine side as much.
And on that note, we recently heard that the richest person in the UK right now is Dyson, James Dyson, who's
Yeah,
even richer than the Queen now, and he's a designer. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and you also brought up Wipro picking up companies, and Mahindra has picked up Pininfarina as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So we are seeing a lot of interest in design at this point of time in India, and we don't see that stopping. So and I'm glad that we've seen your product, Karn, because looking at what Outline does, and I like the way it removes or reduces the repetitive, and so that a creative professional can actually focus on their creativity. I think that's a brilliant thing that you've brought out, and thank you so much for taking your time out to be here. All right. I think it was a brilliant session. We've got some good feedback about it as well. Okay, so Aditya Sriram is saying that it was an amazing session. Thank you for conducting it. Thank you, Aditya, and thank you everybody for making it here. Yasha Bandari as well has really enjoyed the session. So thank everybody who's joined us. If you like the session, please give us a like and subscribe to the DQ Labs YouTube channel for more of these webinars. Um, just before I leave, I'm going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to do a webinar on interview tips and preparation for those who are um, preparing for entrance exams in 2021 and 2022. You all can attend this. Again, this is an open session for anyone, so please share the link. There's a small bit.ly pre-registration form that you need to fill, and anyone who wants to attend this, your friends who are trying, doesn't matter, it's an open session for everyone. Please do attend this, it's going to be good. All right. Thanks a lot, Karn, and looking
Dion.
forward to working with you a lot more in future.
Thank you so much, Dion. This is a fantastic session. Completely enjoyed it. Wish you guys much luck. And thanks for everyone who was part of this session who tuned in. Please share it with more people. Like Dion said, subscribe to the channel. They do some fantastic content, and live long and prosper. See you on the other side.
Take care. Bye.